was a space I was unfamiliar with. So I read the play, I go to the meeting, and then I read the play again because now I know what the space looks like. And now I know I've met with the scenic designer and I've sort of seen his scenic design. So now I can start reading the play again with those elements in mind. So I read it with, I know I've got a huge headstone now and 2 trees I'm going to have to light around that are going all the way up to the grid where my lighting instruments are. And I can start picturing the play now as I read it within the confines of this little space that we're working in. That kind of thing. So, but yeah, it's good to read it and have the space in mind too. That kind of thing. But sometimes it's just free form. Sometimes you don't know what space you're going into. So you just try to have to imagine what might the color be like in this scene for this mood. So you can grab those basic elements later when you're trying to put your plot together. And at least you have some kind of concept of the mood, the texture, the times of day, all that kind of stuff that you're looking for. All right. The other thing you might have to do is research the play. If it is a period piece, and they're talking about lights at night, one of the things you might have to research is, what kind of lights at night do they have? Are they gas? Are they electric? Are they limestone? What might they be? So research might be involved, especially if you're doing an older period piece, depending on what your director wants to do. Now, your director might say, okay, we're doing Hamlet, but we're going to do it contemporary. Well, then your research is, your everyday modern world. But if he's setting it in an earlier period, then you have to research, are we doing torches? What kind of effect does that torch have? What kind of torch would it be? Where are we setting it? What country are we setting it in? What would they be using? So a little bit of research is involved, especially if you're doing a period piece. And then, of course, knowing the other people that you're working with. So usually, if we're talking about the people that you're working with, most directly you're working with the director. And then there's a whole slew of designers usually working on a play. There's the costume designer. Excuse my sloppy writing. There's the scenic or set designer. There's the sound designer. There's, of course, you, the lighting designer. And sometimes we're starting to get more and more into all these newfangled technologies, so sometimes there's a projection designer, right? Mm-hmm. The other person that you tend to work with, these are most of the artistic people, with the director sort of being the overseer and kind of giving you the guiding, like this is the style that I want to use, this is how I see the play, and it usually affects the concepts you guys come up with, but the stage manager is also a part of the process. And the stage manager is usually the information person. They're usually the one coordinating everything. They make sure everybody's in touch as much as possible about what's going on. They usually coordinate meetings and run them. They send out rehearsal reports, contact lists, all that kind of stuff during the rehearsal process. And then, of course, during the show, the stage manager is the person you give your cues to so that they can call your lighting cues accurately. The sound designer will give them their sound cues so that they can call the sound cues accurately. Projection designer will give them projection cues. Scenic designer will give them any rail cues, scenic change of cues, and all that kind of stuff. So the stage manager basically runs the show once all the designers walk away. Does that make sense? They run the show. So those are the basic people. There's other people that are sort of involved in here, assistant directors or producers. And they're usually sort of above the director. So artistic directors, producers. So those are usually above the director. I don't tend to deal with those very often. I do occasionally. Usually a producer or an artistic director might hand me a contract. Maybe my stage manager or somebody will do that for me. Does that make sense? So some of this, if you guys ever look at playbills, you know, where people are credited for the work they do, you can kind of see the hierarchy of stuff in playbills. Like usually producers and artistic directors get some of the top billing, the director gets the next billing, and then the designers are usually sort of listed on the same row. Like they're kind of all considered equal. And then you flip the page and you get to the cast members and all that kind of stuff. Does that make sense? So some of this hierarchy has to do with how you see billing, especially on Broadway plays, that kind of thing. All right, then, so you get to that point where you've kind of researched your space, you've researched your show that you're working on. And you get to production meetings. Woohoo! Wish we haven't had one for Solomon. Do you know if we're having one for Solomon, Eden?
Nobody's requested one yet.
Okay.
I would assume that.
Now, the big thing in these, of course, is to listen. You can contribute. But especially the first one, you want to listen to what the director is wanting to do there. Because you might be imagining this thing, like you've got this play, and it's cute, and it's quaint, and it's set in Ohio in 1950,